Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Romin Yazdonpanoh. I'm the director of Full Circle Language Learning. I'm a teacher educator, researcher of English language learning and intercultural communication. I also serve as a technical expert for the Uzbekistan Education for Excellence program in developing English language standards, scope and sequence, and capacity building for EFL teachers in Uzbekistan for grades 1 through 11. Today I will discuss a standards-based approach to assessment, focusing on formative and summative assessment. We'll look at backward design approach to ensure alignment between standards, materials, instruction, and assessment. We will also look at a taxonomy for teaching, learning, and assessment, also referred to as Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy can be utilized by materials and assessment writers and teachers in designing assessment activities that are age and level appropriate for students. So why is a standards-based approach to assessment important? Well, the EFL standards for grades 1 through 11 are the basis for assessment and therefore serve as a map for teachers, material writers, and officials responsible for evaluating, developing, and implementing formative assessment, summative assessment, and national exams. Standards provide guidance or a framework for assessment that is fair, equitable, measurable, and useful to teachers, students, and parents. Students need time to meet standards. They can't do this by only studying very hard for an exam and memorizing the information. They may be able to do this in some subjects, but not in foreign languages. Success in language happens over time because students are developing the skills and confidence to communicate. The standards are the end goal. So in order to make sure students are getting there, it's important that assessment aligns with standards. By looking at the end goal, that is what students should be able to do in English by the end of the school year or grade, it's possible to think about the steps along the way that students need to take to get there. In this way, standards provide guidance on formative assessment or assessment for learning. Similarly, since the standards is the end goal, they inform summative assessment or assessment of learning. Understanding alignment between standards, materials, instruction, and assessment ensures a positive backwash effect, where there is a match between what is taught and what is tested, and where instruction and assessment support each other to motivate students toward learning English. So what is formative assessment? Simply put, formative assessment is assessment for learning and is conducted throughout the educational process with a view to enhance student learning. Formative assessment is designed to elicit evidence about student learning, to identify strengths, as well as identify gaps in learning. Through formative assessment, teachers can provide focused feedback to help students meet English performance goals, as well as involve students in the assessment and learning process through self and peer feedback, as well as feedback to the teacher. Formative assessment is most used for daily, weekly, and quarterly assessment and feedback, to identify where learning gaps are, to identify what students are doing well as to identify what skills need to be reviewed, and finally to adjust instruction as needed. Some examples of formative assessment are student book and workbook activities, checklists, rubrics, class observation notes of student performance, feedback from the teacher to students, as well as feedback to the teacher from students, and also as a way to provide self and peer feedback to each other. So what is summative assessment? Summative assessment is assessment of students' learning at the end of a unit, quarter, or grade level, involving formal testing or examinations. Summative assessment is most used for assessing learners' achievement at the end of a unit, term, or grade, ranking, grading, or promoting students, certification purposes, as well as to provide overall feedback on how well instruction, materials, and formative assessment activities are preparing students for summative assessment. Some examples of summative assessment are projects, essays, unit exams from the student book and test generator, as well as portfolios of student work throughout the year. Backward design begins with the learner and focuses on the real goals for learning a language. Backward design is one of the core practices for effective language instruction that relies on thinking purposefully about teaching and learning. The following are stages of backward design that can be applied to aligning learning performance standards, assessment, and teaching activities and materials. So the first stage is what should students be able to do in English? Identifying what these learning goals are can be done through an analysis of language performance goals. This information should come from a diversity of stakeholders, such as students, teachers, parents, administrators, policymakers, teacher educators and researchers, and even future employers. This information can inform the big ideas of, for example, a unit of study that consider the essential information from the stakeholders. The second stage is what evidence will show what students can do. Students' performance standards should serve as a guide for determining what skills and competencies students should demonstrate. Both formative and summative assessment help to measure learner progress. The third stage is what learning activities are needed. These are the day-to-day learning activities in the student learning materials and teaching activities that aim to support students' learning in meeting performance standards. For language educators, backward design provides a roadmap. Similar to a GPS navigation, we can get to the same destination depending on where we are starting from. In this way, a positive washback effect takes place, where there is a match between what is taught and what is tested, and where instruction and assessment support each other to motivate students towards learning English. As much as possible, assessment tasks should require the same standards and communicative language use practiced in the classroom, so that there is a match between what is taught and what is tested. If a test has positive washback, there is really no difference between teaching to the curriculum and teaching to the test. Benjamin Bloom and colleagues published a framework for categorizing educational goals. Known as Bloom's taxonomy, this framework has been applied by generations of K-12 teachers and college instructors in their teaching. In 2001, a revision of Bloom's taxonomy with the title A Taxonomy for Teaching, Learning, and Assessment was developed. The lower order cognitive skills of remember, understand, and application can be used to ensure that activities and assessment ensure that students have the fundamental knowledge and skills for more cognitively demanding assessment tasks that require students to analyze, evaluate, and create, utilizing the skills, knowledge, and strategies they are learning. Bloom's taxonomy can be utilized by materials and assessment writers and teachers in designing assessment activities that are age and level appropriate for their students and provide evidence of language ability across the hierarchy of learning and assessment tasks. So we'll start first with self-awareness. Self-awareness, or being aware of yourself, is the ability to recognize your emotions and your thoughts and to recognize how those thoughts and emotions influence your behavior. Self-awareness includes ability to label feelings and relate them to thoughts and behavior, ability to accurately assess one's strengths and weaknesses, an ability to recognize that actions have both positive and negative consequences, and an ability to examine prejudices and biases. Here we can see some examples from the Prepare Grade 9 book. In the example on the left, the listening activity integrates the following points of self-awareness. Here we can see an ability to accurately assess one's strengths and weaknesses. As you can see here in the listening activity, the students are having a conversation. And they're having a conversation about their ability. In this case, an ability to play an instrument and to sing and to kind of like analyze and compare their ability to that of another classmate. They also can have some discussion questions here about who in the classroom might sing beautifully or more loudly or more quickly or more quietly. So you can see this integration of linguistic skills, in this case vocabulary. The activity on the right, titled Teen Health, integrates speaking, reading, and linguistic skills with social-emotional learning, such as an ability to label feelings and relate them to thoughts and behavior, an ability to accurately assess one's strengths and weaknesses, and an ability to recognize that actions have positive and negative consequences. If we see here in this example, the topic is on teen health, and it guides students in discussing certain behaviors and habits such as exercise routines, their health habits, what could be some dangers in this case of like dangerous behaviors like listening to loud music. So that's the kind of like discussion there on an application to students' lives. And then it has a reading activity that integrates those same kind of skills and topics. So here we can see another example from the Prepared Grade 9 book. And in this activity, the activity is titled Teen Health, and it integrates speaking, reading, and linguistic skills with social-emotional learning. In this case, students are able to label feelings and relate them to thoughts and behavior, to develop an ability to accurately assess one's strengths and weaknesses, as well as an ability to recognize actions that have positive and negative consequences. So as you see, this topic is on teen health, and it's really reflecting on behavior, habits, and attitudes and opinions on different aspects of health that relate to teenagers. And as we can see here in the different activities, reading, pronunciation, vocabulary, and speaking skills are integrated with developing students' social, emotional learning competency. Another competency is that of social skills. Social skills enable young learners to interact positively with diverse individuals, establish and maintain relationships, and navigate social situations. The development of social skills naturally follows social awareness. Young learners with competent social skills communicate clearly, listen actively, cooperate with diverse individuals, and work cooperatively to achieve a common goal. Social skills include an ability to interact positively with diverse individuals, an ability to establish and maintain relationships and navigate social situations, and an ability to cooperate with others to achieve a common goal. So we see this example here from the Guess What series. And in this example, the students are asked to read and listen to this email that this young student is writing to his friend or his pen pal. And in this example, students are learning how to maintain relationships, right, in a positive way. In this case, integrating the skills of reading and listening. In the next example from the Prepare series, students are developing skills of collaboration and cooperation. And in this case, they are integrating skills of working together on a project. And so these are some strategies here that students can read about in this case, and then apply them to a project where they have to prepare a presentation. So, what can teachers do to improve our ability to teach social emotional learning? A great place to start is by developing our own social emotional learning competence through reflecting on the 5 core competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, social skills, and responsible decision-making. So I ask you, how can we model social emotional competence in our teaching and in our interactions and communication with our students, colleagues, and with communicating within ourselves? This can be done through both independent reflection, journaling, as well as discussing the social emotional competencies with friends, family, colleagues, and students. In this way, language learning supports students holistically for the classroom and beyond in their daily lives and professional careers.